Home Affairs Minister Dr. Leon Schreiber has extended the temporary concession for foreign nationals who are awaiting the outcome of visa, waiver and appeal applications. The new expiry date for the concession, which applies only to foreign nationals who have been legally admitted into South Africa, is December 31st of this year. Dr. Schreiber joins us to discuss the extension further. Minister, welcome to The Full View. So you've made good on your promise. Before your swearing in, you were asked what you would look to prioritize. You said visas, and today you've gone on to extend the temporary concession. Talk to us about this extension.
Good afternoon. Yes, indeed. This is, of course, one of a number of key priorities. It's certainly not the only one, but it is an important aspect of the economic role that this department has. I think that we sometimes underestimate the ability that Home Affairs has to help enable economic growth and job creation in South Africa by making sure that we facilitate the lawful process of people who want to either contribute skills or capital, investment or tourism to South Africa. And I think that the move today, coming, of course, just hours after the swearing-in ceremony yesterday, will hopefully send a signal both in South Africa and to the world that we are indeed going to take this role of Home Affairs seriously to make sure that where people want to come to this country legally, want to contribute and help us create jobs in South Africa, that they will be welcomed and that the process will be managed in a more effective way than has been the case up until now. I can share with you that the reason behind this concession is actually quite straightforward. The reality is that the department is currently sitting on about 145,000 applications that need to be processed. Now, you can imagine as the new minister walking into an office with 145,000 such applications on your desk effectively. And so what this concession does is it ensures that people who have already applied for renewals or waivers or appeals on their existing legal visas will not be punished while the department tries to clear this backlog. So that is, of course, the ultimate goal. And I hope that the next time we talk about this issue, we will be much closer to having resolved that particular backlog.
And then, Minister, this culture of having one extension expire and then there's a bit of a lull or a period where everybody's in limbo and confused, and then maybe 3 days or 7 days later, then you sign for an extension. Are you looking to perhaps do away with such, where there's that period of just confusion?
Yes, absolutely. I think in the first instance, the culture of having these concessions and extensions in the first place is one that we need to deal with. And we can only do that if we eradicate the backlog so that we can assure people that we're able to process these applications in a more timeous manner. But of course, it will take time for us to get there. And in the interim, this is essentially the concession is the mechanism that we have to use in order to get there. But you're absolutely right. And you would have noticed from the communication that was issued by the department that I made it very clear that while the next deadline approaches for this particular concession, we will not leave people in limbo or have a number of days or weeks where there's simply no communication. So as the deadline approaches, we will, of course, assess where we are in the process, and then we will commit to informing stakeholders, which includes not only the people on those visas, but of course South African businesses, South African tourism facilities who rely on the visa system, so that we can inform them in a timeous manner what the changes to the concession may be. But of course, the ideal that we will be working towards is to make sure that there doesn't have to be another concession, because we are desperately working and committed to clearing that backlog. That is really the key to solving the situation.
Let's hope we do see some sort of change there, because a deadline is never a surprise to officials. They would know beforehand when the deadline would be. But there are, of course, certain conditions for one to benefit from this extended concession. So to whom is it applicable?
Yes, absolutely. First of all, the most important point is that this only applies to people who have legal documentation, of course, in the first instance, but also then people who can prove that they have applied for the particular renewal or waiver or the appeal, and they can do so through the receipt that they would have obtained from the Visa Facilitation Center, and that's essentially the proof, the documentary proof that is required to qualify for this concession. I think it's just important to point out of course, what would have happened if we did not take this step right away? We would have had a situation where people could have been actually declared undesirable in South Africa, despite the fact that we're talking about tourists here and we're talking about people who are contributing to South African companies and to the South African economy. So that is an outcome that really would not have been acceptable, because it is true that it is the department that needs to process this backlog, and we cannot have a situation where we punish people who are contributing to South Africa and to South African jobs. And that's really the essence of this program.
Now, speaking of backlogs, your ministry has more than just the visas backlogs to clear. The asylum seeker system has a huge backlog, especially the appeal side, which the Auditor General said in 2020 would take 68 years to clear if things continued as they were. How far up in your priority list is this matter?
It's a major point that you're touching on that, and I'm glad you raised it, because I think we need a new approach to this particular issue. One of the things that I've already managed to get some information on is the fact that there are international organizations who routinely, have positions on South Africa and want South Africa to play its role in terms of dealing with refugees and asylum applications, but have actually defunded our ability to do so. Some of the staffing shortages that you mention are related to the fact that the international organizations have essentially stopped funding South Africa as we have moved into this period of global conflict. Now, of course, I think anyone can understand that the world is an unstable place right now and that there are refugee and asylum problems around the globe. But I do not think it is acceptable for Africa to be punished. South Africa is a main cog in the wheel of the global migration system. It is certainly one of the most important ones in Africa. And if the world is going to expect South Africa to live up to our end of the bargain, then they must most certainly help us to build the capacity we need to speed up. We cannot have 68 years, as that report says. What we need is the world to also help us, because this is a global problem. We're talking about an international phenomenon, and I can assure you that I will be taking up this issue at all the appropriate global forums to take South Africa and the African voice in there and say, we understand that there are crises around. Not acceptable for Africa to be punished as soon as there are problems elsewhere.
Dr. Schreiber, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. That was Home Affairs Minister Dr. Leon Schreiber talking to us about the extension of the temporary visa concessions. More news on the other side of this break. Do stay with us.